Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Gospel Tech Podcast. My name is Nathan Sutherland, and I'm excited for you to be here with me today. Today, we get the opportunity to talk with Greta Eskridge of Mom Pom Modern, also GretaEskridge.com. And we're going to be talking about some conversations that are really important for us to have as families, especially when it comes to how do we connect our tech and the gospel. And I just do want to give kind of a little bit of a notice that if you have young ears in the car, these may be conversations that you want to have with your kids, but you don't want them to kind of get the introduction from this podcast. So if there are little kiddos around, you may want to pause this, come back to it later when you have a chance to be alone, or at least not with active listening ears if you're in the car or something. So just be forewarned, we're not going to be inappropriate, but we are going to be talking about some big conversations. So with that in mind, what we're going to talk about, Greta has done a lot of her writing and her speaking on things like homeschooling, but in the last couple of years has moved into the topic of pornography. So we're going to be talking about how do we address this without being scared of it? How do we deal with this in a loving way with our kids that doesn't just dismiss it as, well, you know, everyone's human and God has grace, but also doesn't shame and build guilt and build walls so that we are not trying to simply keep our kids, quote unquote, good, but actually teach them how to be loving and what real love looks like. So that's going to be our conversation today with Greta. Really excited to have you here for it. So let's get it started. Welcome to the Gospel Tech Podcast, a resource for parents who are feeling outpaced and overwhelmed as they raise children in a tech world. As an educator, parent, and tech user, I want to equip parents with the tools, resources, and confidence they need to raise kids who love God and use tech. Hi, everybody. I'm Nathan with Gospel Tech. This is Greta Eskridge of GretaEskridge.com and also Mom Pom Modern. And so Greta is mother of four, wife of one, loves Jesus, writes, talks, has a book coming out in July. Congratulations, by the way. And talks a lot about homeschooling, family, sourdough, and how do we fight pornography. So we're going to have a little bit of a conversation today. Greta, I just want you, if you would be so willing as to kind of take a little bit of this conversation and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Wow, you gave me a great introduction. I love there's a widespread there.
There's a lot there. There's a lot.
There's a lot going on. I have a lot of interests and I'm passionate about a lot of things. So I guess that shows through. So like you said, I'm a mom to four, and I have a 16-year-old son, a 14-year-old son, 12-year-old daughter, and a 9-year-old son. So we are just at such a great stage in parenting. We've got kids that can stay home alone. So my husband and I can go out on a date or go out for coffee. And they're also just becoming, their own people and growing up before our eyes. And it's just really fun to engage with them at this stage in the game.
Yeah, that's awesome.
We live in Southern California. We've lived here our whole lives, both my husband and I. And we have been married for it'll be 22 years next week.
Congratulations.
And we are, thanks. We're trying to decide. I think there are actually some restaurants open near us.
Ooh.
So we might actually get to go out to eat at a restaurant for our anniversary.
That would be so exciting.
It will be very exciting. So
that's awesome.
That's a big thing in our world right now.
Yeah. 22 years, that's huge.
Yes.
And yes, restaurants reopening. We don't have that yet. We have like the takeout thing. You can like go get it. Like we do a lot of Chick-fil-A, so you can like do it from the parking lot and like tell them you're there and go and pick it up and like run away with it. So that's a huge deal. And I mean, you mentioned you have a lot of interests, you have a lot of passions. I actually think I may have forgotten to say homeschooling in there is one of your passions. So, I mean, from homeschooling to, disclaimer, I talked about this. Families, we will today be addressing some relationship issues and some ideas of who we're made in the image of God. So families, if you're listening to this in your car and there are little ears present, we're not going to talk about anything that's going to like scald their minds, but there may be words we say that you don't want them to hear from us. So I did want to get that out there. Maybe listen to this a spot where you can feel free to engage the full conversation and not have to do any on the spot explaining, mommy, what's right? Like we don't want that to happen. So with that in mind, now my question is, I guess what came first in your writing and speaking and passion? Was it the homeschooling side? Is it the sexuality and pornography fighting side? And then whichever came first, like how did that progression occur for you?
Okay, so this is a great question because it like I said, there's a wide range of
Right.
stuff going on in my life and stuff that I talk about. So I was homeschooled myself.
Okay.
So homeschooling has always been something that I've been passionate about. I mean, when I was probably 13, I decided when I had kids, I'd homeschool. And when
Wow.
I met my husband and I was 17 and we started dating,
Also homeschooled?
he was not homeschooled. No.
Okay.
But I told him, I was like, hey, I mean, I don't even think we were like really dating. We were just hanging out as friends. But I said, when I get married and have kids, I'm going to homeschool. So if you're not okay with that, probably we shouldn't keep hanging out. So clearly
early set down. Yeah.
Yes. He said, sure, I love homeschooling, which, he really didn't know very much about it. But over the years,
It's grown on him. It's grown on him. Sure.
So,
Amazing.
so yes, I have cared about homeschooling from the beginning. And I actually taught public high school for 5 years before we had kids. And I loved teaching high school. I loved my students. I loved teaching, and I was an English teacher. I loved my subject matter. And I just loved being are you an English teacher as well?
I mean, I was middle school, so I was language arts, but my wife was
Nice.
a junior English teacher for
Nice.
10 years. So 8 years,
Oh,
maybe
middle
8.
school. That's impressive.
Oh, I love
it.
Dude, this is my first year not teaching, and it is killing me softly. Like I love the work I'm currently doing, but
Yes.
I mean, you have 150 kids every day for a decade. Like
Yes.
that messes you up, right? Like that makes you a weird human. And then like to hang out by yourself and do a bunch of writing all day, like it's a very abrupt transition. I'm not okay with it. So anyway,
I can imagine. No,
yeah.
I remember the first year my son was like 4 months old, and it was that first day of school watching all the other parents walk their kids to school. And I was home, and I wanted to be home, and I had chosen that, and I'd wanted to do it since I was a kid. But still there was a loss because I loved that other life that I had. I loved being a teacher. So homeschooling my own kids was the perfect transition because I wanted to still be teaching and interact with kids. I just was doing it on a smaller scale, obviously, 4 instead of 150.
Sure, sure. Yeah, but different. Like they don't transition out after 50 minutes or whatever, right?
No,
You're still there.
I'm stuck with them, and they're stuck with me.
Yeah.
But I loved it. I wanted to do it with my own kids because my own experience as a homeschooler was so positive. And so I wanted to be able to do that with my own children. And so that was really where I started. When my daughter was a brand new baby, I decided to start a blog because I realized with a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and newborn, I would never scrapbook again. And that had been my method.
Scrapbooking.
Remember scrapbooking?
So good. Shutterflies destroyed it for all of us. Shutterflies destroyed it for all of us. But scrapbooking is fantastic. I still have some. The glue kind of peels now.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
My kids love them. But I was like, I can't ever do this again. Who has time to cut things out and
to keep 1,000 little pieces? Did you have like a Cricut? Were you one of those people that had like the automated paper 3D printer thing? Okay.
I was never that advanced.
Okay.
I was just cutting things out with scissors. Yeah. And the little mini paper cutter.
Yep. Sweet. And so then you moved to blogging.
Yeah. Because I was like, this has to change. But I wanted to keep a record of our memories and put pictures in there. And I saw like, oh, blogging. I could do that. So I started blogging. And at first just my mom and my sister read my blog. And then a few more people did. And then eventually, like years later, someone asked me to speak at a homeschool conference, and it's grown from there. And now I'm a speaker and a writer.
Look at you.
All because I said goodbye to scrapbooking and hello to blogging.
Hello, blogging. Well, and followed that passion you had of like, I'm passionate about educating my kids, so I'm going to do that. and I'm still passionate about this conversation. So
Yeah.
pursuing that. And then how did your conversation about kind of sexuality, pornography, like that's not a seamless intro from
No,
homeschooling,
it's
blogging.
not.
So how did that come
No.
about?
Well, what I found was that as my kids were growing up, I really wanted to, I recognized they were growing up like in a porn saturated world, and
Hmm.
I wanted to figure out how to help them navigate that as safely as possible and give them tools. So I started researching just for myself and started learning a lot. And what I found was there were very few just regular moms like me talking about this topic. And of course, the more I learned, the more I realized that this was a very big deal, and parents needed to talk about it to their kids, and parents needed to talk about it with each other. But I wasn't hearing anybody talk about it except maybe like the experts, which, if you're already intimidated by the topic in the first place, learning from an expert can feel even more overwhelming.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
at that time, I had a podcast with some friends, and I said, I think we have to do an issue and talk about pornography. And they were all fellow homeschooling moms, and they were like, oh my gosh, we can't. And I'm like, you don't
We
have to say anything.
can't say
I'll do
those
it
words.
all. Yeah, for
Yeah.
real. So that's what I was like.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'll do it all. And it was incredibly awkward. I felt so uncomfortable and so nervous. And they literally said nothing. I did the whole thing, and it was not great.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I felt uncomfortable to even say the word pornography,
Yeah.
um, because it just was so new, to be open about it. But what I found was, as soon as we put out that episode, I was just talking to so many moms who said, thank you. I didn't know how to talk about this. I didn't know what to say. I'm so scared. How do I talk to my 7-year-old and say the word pornography to them? And you
Right.
just made me feel like I could do it. And so then I just realized, like, hey, you know what? I have this platform God gave me. I need to use it in ways that will help people. And for whatever reason, God said, this is the way you're going to help people.
You're gonna address this.
So here I am.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, just kind of seeing a need and stepping into it. So when you address that conversation, like how do you like it's okay, so I'm going to try to focus this question because I have like 3 or 4 questions I want to ask at the same time, but I'll try to go with one. So you have recognized the need and you felt the kind of the acceptance of that, like people saying like, we're hungry for this, like we need more information. How do you go about having that conversation on a subject that is so just rife with shame and with condemnation and like there is a righteous truth on this, like this is objectively bad, like we can say that, and yet that doesn't make you objectively bad any more than anyone else. Like we're all sinners in need of a savior. So if we love Jesus and this is an area our family struggles or this is something you've witnessed, like how do you go about not bringing the shame and the guilt of being right on a subject, right? Like it's so easy to be right about something but not be loving. So how do you bring the love into the truth of this really, I mean, it's everywhere that we go, like into this, what am I trying to say, saturated area of our culture?
Yeah. I've sort of been learning on the fly, but really just to be really honest. And I think to be honest and to be unafraid. And so to say, like, we have to take a firm stance and say, this is dangerous. This is wrong. This is destructive. And so we want something better for our kids. And when I have approached it that way, every parent wants the best for their kids. And so even if it's something they're struggling with personally in their life, like currently, they can still say, I would like better for my kids, but I need help. How do I do this? So to say, it's destructive, but I want to help you figure out how to navigate that and to offer better to your kids. It opens the door to the conversation rather than to say it's bad and tell your kids it's bad and that's it. Door shut. That doesn't open the door to conversation. That just shuts the door and we can't move forward. Instead, to say, this is damaging. How can I help you? Then we can move forward. So that's been my method. And of course, to say, so many of us have been affected by it, either personally or in our childhood or in our marriage. Maybe we have a spouse who's struggling. Maybe we struggle with it. Maybe our kids been exposed and we feel ashamed to tell anyone. When I put all that out there on the table and say, this is what we're dealing with, there's no secrets, there's no need to hide. I am not judging you. I am not angry with you. I am here to help. Then it breaks down a lot of barriers.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm actually I'm gonna go to a later question, because I want to return to kind of that progression we're on of talking about how you do this. But you mentioned just in families, and this is something that just has been kind of peppering my mind. So I'm mid-30s, right? We have enough friends who've been married for long enough that we have seen some stuff go off the rails, just personally, people we love. And then in our line of work with gospel tech, right, we're dealing with technology and truth and love and hope. And so we're running into families who this is an active struggle, either because they have amazing amounts of hurt in the area of sexuality, pornography, relationship, or so the past hurt, or they're actively dealing with this, but then they still have that 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old, right? That middle schooler, and they want to be able to address it in love, but they feel so much shame. They don't exactly know how to progress that. Like they almost want to outsource it. Like this is a conversation to be had in love. It's part of our modeling. Like I'm loved by Jesus, so I'm going to model that love to you.
Right.
How do you, what would you say to a family who's struggling with that, as far as like a way to go about processing their own hurt and then extending love to their kids while they're in it? Not like I used to struggle with this, kids, but like that was a long time ago. Like this is an active, open wound, but I can't just wait like 10 years to help my kid. Like how do you help, or what would you say to a family to help them navigate that?
Well, there's a couple things. I think, first of all, I think that it's important to recognize that while the effects of pornography abuse or addiction can be extremely painful and damaging, it is still a sin like any other. So if you are struggling with pornography or you've been hurt by pornography, you still can talk to your kids about it. Just like if your kid is dealing with angry outbursts and you have dealt with angry outbursts in your life, probably currently as a parent, at some point there's an angry outburst. You don't say, well, I can't tell my child methods for controlling his temper because I sometimes don't control my temper. No, of course, you step in and you say, hey, buddy, I know this is hard and I know you're struggling. Let's talk about how you can use self-control and work on angry outbursts. Even if you're struggling with them yourself, you're still going to walk with your child through that. The same would be, it would be the same for pornography. Perhaps they're not old enough for you to share with them that you're struggling with it. And they don't need to know that yet, but you can still step in and talk to them about it. Whether or not you address your own issue, you still can and should talk to them. And I really believe that God can take the pain or the issue that's in your life caused by pornography, and he can use that as the fuel to light you up and say, son, daughter, I want better for you. And be passionate about helping them and sharing with them, because you know firsthand the hurt that it can cause. And you don't have to shut off just because it's been an issue or is an issue in your life.
Yeah. And even kind of what you mentioned before, right? That some of that even is going to be a lie, right? Like that idea of, well, I'm too broken to help my kid because, this thing happened or I did this thing and that disqualifies me from participating. Like that's the whole idea of God being made great in our weakness.
And God's grace covers everything. It even covers pornography. And our culture, especially the Christian culture, takes sexual sin and it attaches so much shame, and there's so much silence that we are afraid, like I was afraid, felt uncomfortable saying the word pornography.
Right.
Like, not, I am a porn
And
addict,
your
just
podcast,
saying.
yeah, your podcast partners as well. They're like, we're not doing
Yes, we
that.
can't say a word.
Yeah.
So I understand, like, the whole, the fear and the shame, but once we break through that and we find, like, we have, there's no condemnation in Christ. So we can say, Lord, help me with this, help me so I can help my kids. And he'll step in, just like you said, into our weakness.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. And I hope that's an encouragement to families as they hear that and they feel that kind of weight lifted of like, man, a lot of that is self. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I have to hide this so that other people will respect me and love me and care for me.
Right.
And a lot of times, I mean, it's like, I don't know, it's like hiding a coal in your hand, right? Like I'm going to squeeze it harder. And so no one can see my pain. Be like, that's not the way to deal with it. Like
No.
drop it fast.
Yeah.
So I hope that's an encouragement. I guess to then extend that to where I took the tangent, I guess what's one thing you want parents to know about their children? I mean, again, we're dealing with kind of families with kids 6 to 16. So the kids in that kind of age range, want them to know about their kids going online. And then what would you want them to, if you could only pick one thing for them to do about their kids going online? Like what would those kind of be from the knowledge and then the action side?
Great question. I would say if your kid is online, even if you have filters up and even if you're there is a very, very high probability that they will stumble upon porn.
Yeah.
You know, most of the time it's going to be accidental. They're going to be playing, you know, an age appropriate game on a tablet and they click on a pop-up ad.
Right.
And it's a game for 6-year-olds, but those people who are producing pornography are not idiots. They know how to get around your, you know, age appropriate rating on your game, and they'll put in a pop-up ad that's inappropriate and can lead your kid to porn. Or, you know, it could happen when they're doing a search for, you know, Disney princesses, and that's a completely harmless search. But again, there are people who are trying to expose your kids to porn. So they are actively trying, which means, excuse me,
I'm good.
They are actively trying to expose your child to pornography, which means your child will probably, very likely, be exposed to it. And some children are going to be exposed to it because they're going to look for it because they have questions and you haven't talked to them about it. And they heard something from somebody at school or a friend on the bus or at the baseball field or whatever.
Right.
So the chances of your child being exposed to porn is very, very high if they have access to technology. Even if they don't have access to technology, they can find it in a book. There are plenty of books at the library that have soft porn images, which are a gateway.
Yeah.
So like currently the stats are kids by the time a child reaches the age of 18, there's like a 90% chance that they've seen porn.
Right.
So, which would take me to yeah, it is. I mean, it's like, it's almost inescapable. But that leads me to what then do parents need to do? So once you recognize, okay, this is what I'm dealing with, this is the reality, rather than bury our heads in the sand or say, oh, not my kid. Because that's our temptation. We want to protect our kids. So our temptation is to be like, well, not my child, but
my kid's a good kid. They wouldn't.
Yeah, exactly. He goes to church. He's homeschooled. He's, you know, he doesn't even like girls or whatever our excuses. He's not interested in sex yet. So all the things I've heard, set those aside and just say, okay, this is what I'm dealing with. What do I do now? Yeah. And I like to give parents three things that they can do to help their child before they've seen porn, or if it's already happened, to prepare them for it happening again. Okay. And that is, first, you need to give them a definition of what pornography is. So you can't just say, hey, there's this thing called porn. I don't want you to look at it if you see it. And that's your conversation. Like,
Sure.
That doesn't help very much. So
Sure.
you do actually have to give them a definition. And of course, it's going to be age appropriate. If it's your 6-year-old, that's different than your 16-year-old. But
Okay.
you need to give some sort of a definition of what it is. So your child will see it and they'll know. Like if you just say, there's this thing called pornography, they don't know what that is. You could be
Right.
saying there's these things called butterflies. And they're like, okay, well,
Great.
I don't know what that
I'll
is.
find out
Like,
what this is.
yeah, identify it
I'll ask
and give it a
Siri.
definition, and then tell them where they might encounter it. So this is not so they're going to go look for it, but helpful ways for them to be prepared. So if you're on a game and a pop-up ad comes up, don't click on the pop-up ad. Or if you are doing a search like such and such, you could stumble upon, like you'd be more likely to stumble upon these kind of images.
Sure.
So give them some contexts of places where they might see it. A friend might show you on their phone.
Yeah.
And
That's
what are you
huge.
going to do when that happens? Or somebody might send you a message when you're playing in your Xbox and say, hey, look at this. And you think, oh, okay. And you open it. No, don't do that. So give them ideas of where they might see it. And then
Okay.
lastly, tell them what to do when they do see it.
Hmm.
So give them a definition, tell them where they might find it so they're prepared. And then lastly, what to do when they see it. So if they encounter it themselves, close the computer or turn the phone or tablet over.
Okay.
If they're with someone, say, I don't want to look at that, and look away. Or if you can, physically walk away.
Yeah.
Talk to a parent or a trusted adult and say, this is what happened. If you give your kids a game plan, they're going to be so much more prepared. Even if they're shocked, they'll be able to remember, oh, we had a conversation about this. I know what to do.
Right. That's good. That's good. And if there's a parent listening going, man, like I loved all that, can I get more? What would be some resources you would encourage them to dive into? Maybe kind of age bracket wise, like the 5 to 8, 9 to 12, 12 and up thing.
So I have a huge list of resources on my Instagram account. I have a highlight there, and it's called Fight Porn. And if you were to go on my Instagram, which is Ma and Pa Modern, and go to that highlight, it will give you a huge list of books, and it has them, tells by age which books are ideal. I've reviewed books, and then there's a whole bunch of other resources there. I would say my top 2 book choices, because honestly, there aren't a ton of books out there for parents to talk to their kids about porn. There's plenty of books for parents to read about the topic, but there aren't a lot where you sit down and show your child. So one for the younger kids is called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. And it is a book that you would sit down and read with your kid, which I think is really helpful if you are a parent who's like, I can't imagine having this conversation.
Right. Yeah.
What do I say?
I'm sweating just listening to you guys talk about it.
Exactly. I'm going to throw up now. Instead, you could just read the book. And I promise your kid isn't going to be weirded out because they don't have all the baggage with the word pornography that we do.
Right.
For them, most kids, especially before the age of 8, it's just another word. And so you're reading them a book and you're preparing them. It's really helpful. I suggest read the book first to make sure you agree with their definition of what pornography is. And then if there's anything that you think, oh, I would want to address this, you could address it. And then the next book for older kids, I would say like 11 on up, all the way through the teen years, is a book called How to Talk to Your Kids About Pornography. And it's a real small book. Yeah. And do you have it? It's one of my favorites. Yes. I have that book highlighted, underlined.
It's not super meaty, people. Like it's very practical.
It's very
if you're watching the video, this isn't good podcast, as I show a picture. But if you're watching the video of it, that one's great.
Yeah. So that one, and you again read it, you're on your own first, and then you can go through and decide what you want to share with your kids from that book. I have read through it with my 2 older boys. I'm going to read through it with my daughter who's turning 12.
Cool.
It's a great resource.
Yeah.
Really
Well,
great.
and those are amazing options. So yes, so it's Monpa Modern
Yes.
as
Or
your
you can just
at
look at Greta
Monpa.
Eskridge on Instagram and you'll
It'll
find
pull
me
you
that
up
way
to the
too.
website or then through
Yeah.
Instagram. So she has links there, and the highlights, those little circles across the top. I
Yes.
only say that because I needed
Right.
that explained to me. So I was like, the
I
what?
totally get it. I totally
But
get it.
my
Yeah.
wife and I have actually used almost all those, I think, and then the TechWise family as well.
Yes, that's a
Yes,
great one.
which
They're
isn't
so
isn't pornography specific, but is more of like the
right.
idea. And that was
Yeah.
hugely influential maybe 3 years ago when we first read that on
Yeah.
how we decided to go about our conversation with tech. And the Good Picture, Bad Picture has a junior version too, right?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Because I think you need to start talking to your kids around the age of 5, which
Yeah.
is like terrifying to a lot of parents. And I totally get it. But given the world that we live in and the world they're growing up in, I like to tell parents our kids are growing up in a pornified culture,
Yeah.
which means they are saturated, like I said before, with images of porn and just with porn being normalized, and that's not okay. And if we don't speak up and help our kids have the true understanding of what pornography is, then they're going to grow up with this normalized idea of porn, that
Yeah.
it's okay, it's no big deal, and
It's not
that's not
hurting
what we want.
anyone, right?
Yeah, it's just normal, it's
Yeah.
natural, it's fun, it's
Yeah.
silly, it's
Yeah.
laughable.
Yeah. And it is, yes, it is pervasive
Mm-hmm.
throughout even Christian culture of just like, well,
Yes.
everyone does it as long as we're not that
Right.
bad, which I actually want to return to. But I did have this. So this happened 2 days ago. So I got this new soundboard mixer
Mm-hmm.
for podcasting. So my wife and I, when we do podcasts
Congratulations.
together, yeah, thank you. We're not speaking through the same microphone, which is what we were doing, just like super
Yes.
super intimate podcasting. So we have this mixer, and I was watching all these YouTube videos because my intelligence on this, like I'll even ask people a question and I found their answers to be intimidating on how to set up.
Yes.
I'm like, I didn't know half the words you just said. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. So I'm watching all these YouTube, and I get an ad. Anna must have looked up like Lululemon or something at one
Right.
point. So I get an ad while I'm watching this on YouTube for, girls in little pajama shorts. And like, no, I don't want to see the ad, inappropriate. The next video I watch, it sends me an ad for some kind of virtual reality sexual experience,
Yeah.
along with the thing they want to sell me. Like, first of all, how is that more appropriate than the pajamas you just sent me?
Right.
And I was like, second of all, I didn't even know this stuff was I didn't know that was a thing. Like, I've seen that in, sci-fi movies. That's a
Right.
thing, right?
Yeah.
But I was like, I didn't know there's so much wrong with what's happening in this ad. So
I
just
know.
that idea of like, this is my work computer. Like, I'm 100% sure there was no searches for pornography, accidental or
Right.
otherwise, on this device. This is my work YouTube account that I'm searching it through. Like, there is no, other than I'm a 30-something-year-old male, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's what they're going off. I clicked inappropriate on the first, like, great, try this one on for size.
Totally. They're like,
robot.
oh, you like inappropriate. Let's give you some more.
Let's
Sounds
see
good.
what you think about that. And I was like, that is amazing to me, because my son, 6 years old, is super into things like the SpaceX rocket launch, right? So we watched that this morning finally.
Right.
A little behind the times, but it's okay. Thanks, YouTube.
He doesn't know.
Yeah, he doesn't know. But that idea of like, man, they could watch Wild Kratts or something on YouTube, and that ad, an algorithm could kick them. Not just like, oh, that was a naked person, but like, that's next level. Like, the conversations we have to fight the idea of what is virtual sex and what's wrong with it.
Right.
Is beyond the conversation of just pornography. And it's huge. It's in Asia right now. Like, it is. Right. That conversation is 5 to 10 years out for a norm. And we're going to have like talking to people about open marriages and, all of these things is one part of it.
Yeah. Sex robots. Like, that's a thing.
Robots is a thing.
It's a real thing. And and it is. That's why we have to be able to start the conversation early, so that as our kids grow and they're exposed to more and more, they're learning more and more, we are ready to have even more open and honest conversations with them with no shame, no fear. And that starts by talking with them at an early age so that you have created a culture, a healthy sexual culture in your home where no one is afraid, where you don't feel awkward. And that takes time to create that culture, but it's so important to create it so that by the time they're older and they see an ad for a sex robot or a virtual experience or a sex pillow on Amazon or whatever,
Right.
all of those things people have told me about, you can say, hey, let's talk about it. And nobody's embarrassed. Nobody feels ashamed. There's no awkwardness because you've created an open, safe place.
And it's not establishing like a laissez-faire attitude.
Right.
It's not just like,
Not
oh,
at all.
whatever, it's sexuality. Like it's really cherishing it and taking it serious. Out of that, valuing and recognizing how good it is and what its proper place is. I just, as you keep talking, I get that picture from the movie Mean Girls there's a PE teacher who's like, don't have sex. If you have sex, you will get pregnant and you will die. And just like this, and that's how a lot of us have handled the conversation and or had it given to us. Shout out mom and dad. You did a nice job with the sex conversation. I don't want to, I'm sure you're listening to this. So, but like that is a thing that happened, right? Of just like, here's a thing, avoid it at all costs. And to have a more loving and caring. So then I think the direct correlation, since we're talking about kids, tech, exposure, bringing that conversation early than later, what would you tell the parents who are kind of vacillating this idea of like, do I get my kid a smartphone? I know my son so we went to public school this year. Well, part of this year, starting kindergarten. And he had a friend in class with a smartphone, 6 years old, kindergarten.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, and I know that's real, but
it's a thing. And I was like, wait, buddy, like what kind of phone? And he's like, well, like mommy and daddy's phone. I was like, all right, if he shows you anything on it, you say, my parents said I can't look at that and walk away. Right. Like, I don't care what it is. It could be a game, could be a video, it could be anything. I don't want you looking at his phone. Like there's nothing beneficial that's going to come from that. So what would you say to parents then when they're saying, hey, should I give my kid a smartphone? What is your kind of cutoff for that conversation? Like, how do you process that with families?
Well, first of all, I have to admit, I love the line from the book TechWise Family, where he says, you don't have to, in terms of tech, you don't have to be all the way Amish, but you might need to be a little bit Amish.
Yeah, more Amish than you think.
And I love that. I really love the idea of being brave enough to be counterculture and to say, my kid doesn't need a smartphone when they're 6 or 10 or even 16. My son is 16 and he does not have a smartphone. Neither does my 14-year-old. There are really great options out there that are alternatives. Like there's a phone called Gab Wireless, which is not a flip phone. So your kid doesn't have to feel like they're the lone child who doesn't have a smartphone.
The Amish person.
The Amish person.
Not exactly stylish. Yeah. Yeah.
It's got a touch screen, but it doesn't have internet access, and you can text on it. But I understand not everybody is able or willing to make that choice. But I always like to put it out there and say, you can be counterculture and not give your kids smartphones. But if you are, because I know that's a huge issue to say no entirely. If you are going to give your kids a smartphone, there's a lot of things you can do to help make them safer. But again, you're going to have to take a firm stance on some things. So some suggestions I make, I don't think your kids need social media accounts. Yeah. Your 10-year-old does not need an Instagram account. Even if it's private, they can still look for things and be exposed to things and get messages from people, even if their Instagram account is private. Yeah. Your child does not need a social media account, even teenagers. And I know that I get a lot of pushback from it, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay with getting pushback. My kids don't have social media accounts. And I really believe they're happier. I think their life is happier because they don't have the constant worry about likes and performing and what people think of them.
That's what I was going to ask you, is kind of what is your reasoning behind social media?
They just have real life interactions with their friends, and I think they're happier. So you can say no to social media accounts. You can take Safari and other search engines off a phone. There is no reason in the world that your elementary, middle school, or even high schooler needs unlimited access to the internet and all the stuff that's on it.
Yeah.
So you can disable that, and you can plug in just the websites that you're okay with them visiting, and those are the only ones that the phone or iPod can go to.
Sure.
You can see who they're texting. You can check what's going on with texts and let them know that you're going to be looking, because there are a lot of things that happen in the world of texting that wouldn't happen in real face-to-face life, but we feel safer to make dangerous choices when we're behind a screen. So check what they're doing with texting.
It feels so anonymous.
Yes. Yeah. And like I said, you can make dangerous choices. So those are some of the things that you can do to help make your kids' phone experience safer. You also should enact all the parental controls that are on their phone, and only you obviously should have the code, so that if they type in a website, it'll just come up and it'll say that website is not allowed, and they don't have the code to open up that website. You can also use, different kinds of parental control software on a phone. But the one thing I just really want to caution parents is that sometimes we do all those things and then we get comfortable because we think, oh, they're safe.
Sure.
I took
I built
Safari
good
off.
enough walls.
Yeah, I put all this stuff in. And like you just shared the experience you had, like, the pornography industry is gonna find a way in. You can't porn proof your kid. There's no force field. It just doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And so you have to prepare your kids that even if you have all these steps to keep them safe, which are important, do that, but also don't rely on those only. You still have to have a conversation with your kids. You still have to say, you could see this, and here's what you need to do when you see it.
Yeah. Well, and I want to kind of extend that then. So would you say kind of your view on the parent porn side is that you want to build families that are porn proof, like we're going to get it so you never fail, that you're porn resistant, that you don't fail very often. We're going to really minimize the number of times where breakthroughs and breaches and accidents happen, or that you're porn resilient, that when this happens, because we see that 98% number, that you'll bounce back quickly and you'll have kind of the tools and the rapport to be able to move through those mistakes.
Wow. I've never thought of it that way. And I feel like my mind is just blown. That is brilliant. Like, so great. And what you just said was just so important. I'm totally going to have to steal it and use it in all my talks.
Go.
I will copyright.
Yeah. At Gospel Tech. No, that's okay. That's awesome.
That's fantastic. That way of thinking is so great because I think the idea that we can porn proof our kids is false. It's just not realistic in our world. And also I think especially because at some point our kids are going to go out and all the walls that we've built and the blocks that we've put on their phones and the various steps we've taken to keep them safe, they're going to have to make their own decisions of whether they keep those up or they take them down. And then what's going to happen?
Yeah,
so if you have porn proofed them till they're 18, have you prepared them for what's next when those walls come down? And I think that's where being resilient comes into play, so that if something happens and they see something and then they go back and you haven't told them that this is a struggle and it's not the unpardonable sin, and then they feel like a complete failure, and there's this spiral that begins and they don't know how to talk about it, they don't know how to come to you. Instead, if we help them understand that this is like any other sin, they will fall, but God will help them back up again, and then they can be resilient. I just love that. I think that's such a powerful way to look at it.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad that was helpful. I mean,
Thank you.
it's a question I've been kind of thinking through as I've been learning about your work and watching what you've been doing and processing this with my own kids. So thank you for the work you're doing on that, and I hope that's helpful to families as you share that with
Yeah.
them. That's great. That's awesome. All right. Well, I want to kind of two kind of wrap up questions here.
Okay.
I want to run a little bit away from this conversation, I guess. Well, here, I'll ask it this way. So specifically on the social media, applying it to your family. So in gospel tech, I try to explain technology in really two different camps. That we have tool tech, which is any technology that helps us build and create. We're active in the process with tool tech. So it can have a screen, it can plug into a wall, but it's tool tech if I'm making with it. So it can be an
Right.
iPad that my kid's doing art on. It could be a computer that they're making music or even creating a video game, whatever that is,
Yeah.
tool tech. The other side then is drool tech, and that's all entertainment tech. It's
Right.
consumption based. We're passive in the process. It often has a much faster than real life pace. So all tool tech, I can only build something as fast as my brain can build it, right? So it all happens at the pace of real life. Whereas drool tech, I can consume at an insane rate, right? Like I can be on my phone and listening to music and watching my favorite show while playing a game. Like I can do it.
Oh my gosh.
I
Yes.
just I can pound it in. I think the
I'm
average now,
guilty of that sometimes.
which is because it's very entertaining,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
it's great. So it's not that drool tech is bad,
Right.
but it is, we get a lot of it. I think the
Yeah.
Common Sense Media 2019 was like 8.5 hours, 8 hours, something like that a day
Yeah.
on average. So what does that look like for your family to, in those two categories? Like where do you mentioned your kids don't have smartphones. So what drool tech do they participate in? And what does that look like for you guys as you process? And what tool tech is present in your home, and kind of how have you worked to balance those for you?
Again, I just want to tell you how I love those two categories. I'm learning so much from you in our conversation. That's such a great way to think about it, and I think it's really helpful for kids because that really makes sense. And I mean, what kid doesn't want to talk about drool and get that image and
It's the middle school in me. I did it. My wife's like, you can't have that. It was like 3-4 years ago. I was like, I'm sorry, it's sticky. I'm going to do it. Like it makes sense to me.
It
and
does.
So we're going to roll with it.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
I would say, so we, again, we've had a pretty limited, we've tried to limit our kids' access to a lot of what you would call drool tech. Because I just feel like I would see their creativity and their interest in doing anything else just drain from them. They would become cranky and bickery, and it just, that's not a word, but bickering with one another.
Let's use it.
They would, it sort of sucked the good things out of them. So we have chosen from the beginning, we don't have TV. We never have. We do have Netflix.
Okay.
And they have access to that. They can watch shows, if we do family movie night or on the weekends, sometimes during the week, if it's, mom has to do a podcast, you can watch something. Or
the real thing. Yes.
We do folding the laundry party. Like everybody folds all that huge pile of laundry on the dining room table, and you can watch a show while you do.
Okay.
So we've chosen not to do video games or games on phones or games on tablets. But about a year ago, I think someone gave my boys a vintage Game Boy, I think is what it is. It's a little tiny thing with, very pixelated, and only one person can play at a time, and it does not connect to the internet, which is, I think, incredibly important thing for games. I have some real issues with games that gaming devices that connect to the internet. I think it opens you up to a lot of unsafe things. So I don't ever want my kids to be so deprived from technology that, like I said before, they turn 18, they leave, and they're like, woohoo, the world's my oyster, and they go crazy and just like fall off the deep end. Because technology doesn't have to be the enemy. There's a lot of great things that we can do with it. So they have a Game Boy and they play it. And I don't like video games at all, but they enjoy it. But it's so small and it's not it's not something.
I love video games. I think they're great. And I'm an OG Game Boy guy myself. So they probably like Pokemon Blue on that thing. So
I'm sure somebody just asked for a Pokemon game for their birthday. So
they should have.
I think they would really love to have a conversation with you.
We might need to hang out. I might need to just talk to them a little bit about that.
You might need to. They would
encourage them to join the Bulbasaur side. Everyone goes, everyone. Charmander. That's too mainstream. They need to be a little more hipster. So.
Oh my gosh, yeah, they would definitely think you were so much cooler than me because I have no idea what all that stuff is.
Yes.
But anyways, so as far as like tool tech, we listen to a ton of audiobooks, and in fact, both my older boys, when they turned 14, they got an iPod, not a phone. We chose an iPod again because we thought, well, we want them to learn how to use technology responsibly. And so cutting off all access, they're not going to be able to learn responsibly. We'd like them to learn under us. And so an iPod does not have Wi-Fi access except when they're at home on the Wi-Fi.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
It doesn't have, it's not cell. So
there's no data.
There's no data. It's not cell. We took Safari off. They don't have access to just unlimited access to the internet. They have like lego.com and other things like that are safe. And they use it to listen to audiobooks. We do a ton of audiobooks. So they also like to make movies sometimes with my phone or their iPods. And then one of the newest things we've added into our home during the COVID-19, we're all stuck here, is all of them have learned to draw on my husband's iPad. He's the only one who has a tablet. He uses it he's an artist, so he uses it for creating art. And all of them have learned to draw, and that's the only thing they use it for. But it's been great. They have learned so much and learn how to create different kinds of art, learn how to use programs. Some of them want to be artists professionally when they grow up, so they need to learn how to use tools. Yeah. The only thing I've noticed is, especially with my youngest, who seems to be the most susceptible to struggling with wanting to use technology to the max, like he'll get sucked in and it's very hard for him to step away, is that he'll just want to draw on the iPad because it's easier. And the results are much more spectacular. So we have to say, you can't just draw on the iPad. You have to go old fashioned and draw with a pen and paper. Yeah. So those are some of our drool and tool tech issues. Can I add one thing that I just remembered? And it goes back to having, like, if your kid has a cell phone, and being safe. I would also say no cell phones in the bedroom. A lot of parents are totally down with the no computer in the bedroom, like the computer is in a safe place in the family room in a high traffic area. Yeah. So many parents forget about phones in the bedroom. Like they're like, oh, no computers, but your child's phone or tablet or a video game console, even
Xbox, PlayStation,
is just a computer in the bedroom on a smaller scale. So be really aware of that. Like, use it in the big room, like where everybody is. So that was just a side note. I really wanted to get that in there.
Well, that's good. And there are, and we'll talk in other podcast audience about some of those options. So we've talked before, and we'll talk again about things like Covenant Eyes and Bark, and some of the tools we can implement.
Yes, there are so many.
Tech side to help us fight for our families, not just with them, about tech. So it's not about setting up a police state, but how do you love them well?
Exactly.
Well, then July 14th, you've got a book coming out.
And it's not about porn.
I was going to ask you, what is it about? Because I wanted to what is it about? And you only get one first book. So why did you choose this topic for whatever it is?
Well, that's what everybody's been asking me. They're like, so is your book about porn? I'm like, no, actually it's not. The book writing process is so lengthy. I don't even know when I started, like, not even writing the book, but talking to an agent about ideas. I don't even know if at that point I was really talking boldly or out loud to other people about pornography yet.
On microphone.
That's how long the process is. So the book is called Adventuring Together, and it's about creating relationship with your kids through adventure.
Mm.
And the idea is that I wanted, when my kids were little, to create long lasting relationships with my kids. And I thought, you know, in the long term, when they're teenagers, I want to be with them still, and I want them to still want to be with me. How are we going to make that happen? And how are we going to make it last even to adulthood? And for us, that's been taking intentional time away from home, away from our regular schedule and routine, and going and having all different sorts of adventures together. And
Okay.
so that's the focus of my book, and really helping parents get their kids away from screens and connecting in real life. And
Yeah.
in order to do that, you have to make it appealing. Like, you can't just say no screens
Right. Yeah.
and then offer no alternative,
So
right?
this is super exciting to me because this is a huge part. So we are just getting ready to release this online workshop that we're doing, because basically way before COVID, kind of similar to you, we realized, man, the hardest part in us talking about tech is most of the families struggling with tech are struggling because of their lives, right? Like both parents are working, or a parent's working multiple jobs, and like everyone's everywhere. So we made this online workshop, and as you get to the end of it, you make this family framework. And analog adventures is a huge part, that we remove the
Oh,
distracting tech and we replace with things
yes.
that accentuate what our kids are passionate about, what they're good at, right? Like most of the tech we use in a bad way is just a distraction from something that is actually good.
Yes.
So I love that, right? Like I tell them not to use the H word, right? Don't say hike. Like no one's
Yeah.
a hike is like something you do in the military, like when you.
I have like a whole chapter on hikes.
Okay, all right. So I love that. How do you? I guess can you give us a sneak peek? Is that I don't want to spoil. I don't want any
Yeah.
spoilers, but that's like in the wheelhouse. Like this is going to be a thing for us, because that conversation is so hard. Like parents go, well, what should I do? I'm like, right. Like you're stressed out. You're overwhelmed. You have this kid that hates everything except whatever the tech
Right.
is that you've now
Yeah.
recognized is causing an issue. And we help families do that. So it's not, again, unilateral. I'm going to drop a hammer. I'm right
Right.
or wrong, but they've recognized the kids are on board and they go, okay, well now what? Like,
Right.
how do you have these adventures with your family?
Well, so I totally, first of all, you and I are tracking, like we are on the same page in so many instances. I love it. Like we need to work together.
Yeah.
I'm learning so much from you. And I love that you totally understand the idea of the book, because I do want my kids to want to be with me. And like you said, like if it's just like this police state, then you're not making it inviting. And so we have to invite them in. And that means maybe asking them for a list of things that they are interested in doing, and doing things with them that maybe you would never choose to do, but you know, they're excited about it. So you adventure with them and let them be the leader in it. If they're not excited about going on a hike with you and their little brother, let them bring a friend and invite the friend into the adventure and teach them that they can do things that they previously thought were the worst ever. And maybe because they've got a buddy along, they realize, oh, actually we had fun doing this. And starting small, like it doesn't have to be like our first adventure as a family is climbing Mount Everest. No,
Sure. Is a 2-week trip to the wilderness.
Yeah, like we will learn to skin a bear. You don't have to do that. Like you need to make it doable. You need to make it something that you can handle and that they would actually enjoy. And in the book, I have like whole chapters on, outdoor adventures, indoor adventures, things that like adventuring through books, because I think that we can write that off as like, oh, a bookworm is not an adventure. But I grew up with a mom who couldn't hike or bike, or we couldn't even travel very much because we were often really strapped for money. And she adventured with us through books. And those are some of the most connected and dear memories I have of spending time with my mom, is reading together. So the book is full of lots of ideas of not just why it's important, but the how to actually do it.
Okay. Oh man, that's exciting. It comes out July.
It comes out July 14th.
14th.
And we are going to be opening up for pre-orders really soon. And there's a couple fun pre-order like incentives that you'll get if you pre-order the book. And then on July 14th, you should get it like that day, or like a couple days after.
Okay.
And
people, where should they go to order? The GretaEskridge.com?
Yeah, I will have links to on through at my website, gretaeskridge.com, links on my Instagram page. You'll be able to find it on Amazon. And then, but if you want the pre-order extras, then you would order through the links that I'll have on my blog or on my Instagram account.
That's
so
awesome.
It'll be everywhere.
Wow.
I'll be sharing.
That's coming. I mean, that's coming out. That's like 6 weeks out, right?
I
Like
know it is. It's really soon. It's kind of crazy.
that's super fun though. All right. Well, thank you so much for having this conversation with us and for helping us just kind of talk through the scary, very difficult, but super important conversations of really how do we love our kids well, but how do we specifically address their hearts in the live pornography and the world of tech that we live in that is so saturated and looking for excitement and purpose and distraction, and sex seems to be at the top of the list when it comes to that.
It's an easy way to get people, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But we want to share with our kids that sex is not bad. It's actually something that God created as a gift, and so that's why we have these conversations, so we can show them the truth. And I'm so glad to learn about what you guys are doing and just to hear your ideas. Like I said, I learned so much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. And I just really want to end this with a reminder that if anyone has any further questions or any ideas or anything you want to talk about in the relation to what Greta does with her work, you can find her at Monpa Modern on Instagram. You can go to Greta Eskridge, that's ESKRIDGE, on or at gretaeskridge.com, or just Google her. And you can find more resources on her Instagram page, on her website. She has that book coming out. Or you can just message me directly if you would like. So you can go flintandiron.org or nathan@flintandiron.org, or you can find us at Flint and Iron on Instagram or at Sparking Purpose on Facebook. Thank you all for listening to this. I hope it was encouraging. Please share this with people that you believe can be encouraged and challenged and can benefit from hearing Greta's message and the work God is doing through her. And go support Greta and what she's doing as well, because that's amazing stuff. Thank you all for loving your families well, and look forward to continuing this conversation in the future.